It's time for the Sports Blitz, the only live-streamed local sports show in Arkansas, with all the latest on the sports stories that matter to you.
What a show we've got in store for you today. Welcome into the Sports Blitz on a Friday. We're going to close out the week with a wide variety of topics. Mark Freeman, Weldon Braxton, Maddie Lassiter, inside the Cogswell Motors studios here at this home base. What are we going to call this? We've got to call this something awesome of the River Valley leader. I don't know. What do we call it? The compound, the complex, the
man cave.
I guess we could call it that. Man cave? No, it can't be a cave. Because this is like, okay, maybe it's cave-ish.
All right. I'm a caveman, so hey.
The Crimson Cave. The Crimson Cave.
Oh, but then people think we're Russellville favored. We just care about like the Crimson Cyclone.
Says the Cyclone grad over here.
Hey, you know what? I'm an equal opportunity person. You know,
he's like me. He likes the good teams. That's all I.
No.
Hey, Maddie. Take this for me.
You got to ride it out, Mark. Like if LeBron leaves, you need to ride it out with the Heat, even though we know you're not.
No, I'm going to be a LeBron fan. That's just the way it's going to be.
You're going to be a Laker fan if he goes to the Lakers.
We're going to talk about the NBA playoffs for just a little bit today. I want to find out if we differ on who we think is going to win these series, and we'll give you our NBA champ.
I might go with a surprise.
For your NBA champ, well, you probably saw me talking about this yesterday with Brad a little bit. I'm not as confident as I've been. Last year before, it was just like, it's a no-brainer to me. I know who's winning it. But this year, there's a lot of conversation, a lot of thought going into this. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at last night. I don't know if you saw the ESPN 30 for 30 on the Bad Boys. The 89, it was not just 89, the 80s and into the early 90s Detroit Pistons and the Bad Boys. You've got Isaiah Thomas, you've got Dennis Rodman and Rick Mahorn and Bill Laimbeer and those guys. And it was a 30 for 30s. To me, I'm one of those guys that if I get to watching documentaries, I want to watch every documentary ever. If I read about something, I want to learn everything that I possibly can about that. And so it's got me thinking pretty hardcore about the NBA and got me thinking about the Detroit Pistons and the Bad Boys. So let us know what you think about or what you thought about it. You can give us a call 968-NEWS anytime between now and noon. We'll talk sports with you 968-6397 or you can answer today's CrossFit Russellville poll question. I told you we got a lot of stuff going on today. This is on the other end of the basketball spectrum, college basketball. Frank Haith. I heard a lot of folks in the state bashing him yesterday for taking the Tulsa job. You wonder about that. It seems like that's not even a lateral move. That's a step down to go from an SEC school to Tulsa. You're going from Missouri to Tulsa. What does that? I asked the question today. What does that tell you about him? And what do you think? How do you think these SEC coaching openings? Now you've had Bruce Pearl go to Auburn. You got Tennessee open as Quanzo Martin is gone, and now Missouri. How's that going to affect Arkansas coming into the year? So lots of stuff to talk about today.
Yeah, and I think with Haith, look, the Haith thing to me, it's almost an open and shut case. Look, we know Frank Haith was a year away from being fired. We know what coaches do when they're a year away from being fired. They jump town. Do you think Tubby really felt like Minnesota was a better job than Kentucky? No. I mean, look, Frank Haith, we know his true colors. For those who defended him for the years, we know you're running in a cave, hiding somewhere. We're not going to hear from you. When the Mike Anderson, Frank Haith comparisons were coming up the last few years, we understand what Frank Haith was able to do with mostly Mike Anderson's players. Winning 30 games, getting a number 2 seed, although he did lose in the round of 64 in the NCAA tournament to Norfolk State. But
that's the first round to a 15 seed.
To a 15 seed. So I look at the Frank Haith move, and I know it got a lot of talk yesterday, and I know people, made fun of it a little bit, but it's just one where I kind of shrug at it because, it just makes sense, Frank. You needed to go to Tulsa. We're not surprised you're going to Tulsa because that's what you do. That's what coaches do when they're on the brink of getting fired. You go take a lesser job. Now, the only interesting thing about this story to me, Mark, is this. Tulsa. Can we have a conversation, Golden Hurricane? What were you thinking, Tulsa? I mean, really, what was on your mind? Who told you got to hire Frank Haith. I mean, you got to go hire him now. Go hire Frank Haith. We got to do it. We can't let this pass us by. I don't understand why you would go and get Frank Haith to coach your team. I mean, look, are you tired of being a stepping stone? You don't want any more up and coming coaches. We know Tulsa's been a stepping stone for the last 30 plus years, but even still, you got Frank Haith. Tulsa is who I'm looking at as far as a mental exam.
Tulsa really is kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because they're not going to be anything but a stepping stone. They're not, they're not going to be able to command the cachet of keeping a coach 30, 40 years. They're not going to be good enough to really, but they can get good enough for a short amount of time that Frank Haith can repair his image and go on to something else. And what do they call him? Suitcase Frank or what? Suitcase Frank.
And you know what? As far as that goes, and some people believe that, but I would say this though. So based on that logic, are you saying Arkansas State should have hired, I don't know, Houston Nutt or somebody with a flat declining career just because he won't leave? No, they went out and they got Blake Anderson. And they know Blake Anderson, even with the high buyout, if somebody wants him to go, he'll still leave. But they still kept the pipeline going of young up-and-coming coaches. I think if you're Tulsa, you want stability, but not at this price. I mean, Lord, this is you. I would have taken another up-and-comer if he leaves in a year or two. I would have said fine, but we're not going the Frank Haith route. I mean, Lord.
I don't think he's a good coach. That's just my thought. Like he did a good job of getting transfers in, even going back to Miami and building that way, and then just go ahead. I'm gonna put on this nice suit and look buttoned up over here and not know a thing about how to coach a basketball team.
Because he can look sharp. I'll give him that. He can look sharp over on the sideline. But you know what the irony is? His star point guard transferred from Tulsa, Jordan Clarkson, and that's where he's headed.
Yeah. Well, that's funny. I have a problem with coaches who don't have anything that's theirs. Like I don't have a philosophy. I just do whatever. And he just what is Frank Haith known for? Well, I don't know. Aside from him just leaving, Mike Anderson, what he's known for. Nolan Richardson, what he's known for. That John Calipari, even the dribble drive. Jim Boeheim, the 2-3 zone. What these guys are known for. And I don't have much for coaches like Frank Haith, who I don't. If you ask me what his philosophy is, I just get transfers and
get out there
and leave as quick as I can. So we'll talk a little bit more about college basketball and NBA basketball here in just a little bit. But let's start with local news, local sports. The ballots go out today for the Brightest Stars Banquet. And wouldn't you know it, when I posted these on Wednesday, I posted the nominees, and congratulations, more than 100 nominees came in the first year from 10 different schools. We got some from every school. Now, some schools only send in 2 or 3 nominees, but, that's a start. We had to start somewhere. And we got nominees from every school and in every sport. So we've got over 100 nominees throughout all the sports. And wouldn't you know, the moment I post these on River Valley Leader, I'm starting to get calls and emails from coaches saying, well, where are our kids? And you didn't send anybody.
Whoa.
So come on and send them. And if you can get them in by the time I send the ballot out today, then you'll be all right. But I've had 5 different coaches call me up or email me and send in new students to be honored and to be nominated to win this Brightest Stars Banquet Awards, these awards. So, hey.
Come on now. That's not how it works, though. That's not how it's
supposed to work. As soon as the ballot goes out, they're going to get a big sorry.
That's what I'm saying. Come on. You want to flood emails now, Mark. I think you did a very good job of explaining how the process worked, not only via this show, but via email and the contacts you made. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about some of the parents saying, look, coach, where's my kid? And then they'll blame you, and then you deflect the blame. We've already talked about that. But, I don't have too much bad to say. I have a good relationship with a lot of the football coaches around this area. But, you still got to get your kids turned in for the Brightest Stars Banquet.
Hey, I was looking at it yesterday. We are going to have a great time. Aaron Peters, May 29th. Russellville High School, Aaron Peters from Razorback Nation is going to come in, and he's going to be our master of ceremonies for the night. We're going to give out these 22 awards. between River Valley Leader and Help Network and all our sponsors. We appreciate every one of them. Got them more coming in, and we'll have more until the day of the event. CSI Insurance, been very good to work with. Friendship Community Care, Easy Pawn in Clarksville. A big shout out to the Haas family for sponsoring the baseball award. We've got, and I don't want to forget people, River Valley Radio. Thank you to Johnny Story for all his help. Every time I see him around town, he's just like, hey, if you need anything, just let me know. And then we've got some more in the works. Cogswell Motors obviously going to be a part of this. They're anytime there's something community oriented, they'll be involved. So lots of sponsors getting involved. We're selling tickets now. We've got to make this an event that can sustain itself, so we can do this every year rather than dumping money into it. We got to sell these tickets. I wish we could get everybody in free, but we've got limited space, and we've got to pay for all the awards and the food and all that stuff. So this is not something where RVL or the Sports Blitz is going to be padding its pocket. This is just to make sure we can do this every year and honor these student athletes. So we've got tickets on sale for $25 a piece at the River Valley Leader website right on the top right. You can't miss it, where you can buy your Brightest Stars banquet tickets online. We're going to get tickets printed out, hard copies for those that can't order tickets online. You can go to local businesses, and we'll let you know who those are when we get those tickets in and we get them placed. But we're looking forward to a really good event.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun event, Mark, and I'm still trying to get some things set up to make sure I can be there. But, this time of year kind of smashes together. But either way, it's going to be really fun. I've said this before, Mark, and I'll say it again. The work that you've put in, the work that people here at RVL have done has been nothing short of remarkable because, and I touched on this when I talked about players, the same thing goes with the things that we do here. Is it's not always about us and what we can get in and what helps us. Sometimes it's about players, or it's about young people. It's about somebody other than ourselves. And that's the way this event goes. I mean, you already said it. You're not lining pockets here. Nobody's getting rich. Nobody's making a profit off this event. So you say, well, why would you do something like that? You're a business. Well, sometimes it's about other people. Sometimes it's about uplifting kids. And that's what this thing is about. It's not about, a big show or doing things for ourselves or making a big money grab. You just want to elevate kids. And we live in a time where you ask the question, well, what about me? What did I get out of this? What's the benefit for me or for us or for what I'm doing? And it's not about that. This is one of the things that it's about the kids, it's about families, it's about other people, and that's why I really support this event.
I made the joke before about how I didn't get to play much in high school. Little white kid playing basketball at Clarksville just wasn't happening. So I know how it feels to not have the opportunity to show your stuff or to even be recognized. I remember I skipped our senior awards banquet in basketball because I was just like, why would I go?
I'm sure you got a participation award.
Yeah. I got it given to me the next day. It was like, congratulations, thank you for showing up. It was a ribbon, that's what we do these days. But I heard my coach talked about me in the thing. I guess it was for like Big Mouth of the Year award or whatever. But so a lot of these student athletes haven't been, and we've talked about this before, they haven't been honored. I went to a signing last Friday for Hannah Ray from Russellville High School. She's a swimmer, and she's going to swim at the next level in college, and she got a scholarship to do so. But, and this is no offense to her, I'd never heard of her. And it's not her fault. She's doing great things in her sport, but she doesn't get the recognition that these other guys do in these other sports. Well, on this night, she's going to get the same recognition. She's going to be on the same stage, saying she's the winner. I don't know who the winner is going to be, but the swimming winner, the golf winner, the tennis winner, the cross-country winner, they're going to be on the same stage with the football and basketball and baseball winners. So that's the part that most excites me, and I'm looking forward to it. And speaking of exciting, I got a call on Wednesday afternoon from Eli Craner, head coach of the Clarksville Football Panthers, and he's doing some cool stuff over there in Clarksville, and I wanted to give a shout-out because on May the 10th, they're doing Panthers Service Day, and I get to go be a part of it and go chaperone a team of little hoodlums running around town, going to pick up some. I don't even know what we'll be doing. We'll either be picking up trash somewhere or mowing somebody's yard or doing something nice for folks from about 8 to noon in Clarksville. So a big shout-out for Panther Serve Day and Coach Craner and the squad over there in Clarksville doing big things for the football program. So I need to say thank you for thinking of me, and we'll represent the River Valley Leader in Sports Blitz real well over there, I hope. And before we go to break, need to make mention Arkansas Tech news, man. We've just been talking a little bit about them recently, but the baseball team going nuts right now, up to number 4 in the country, won 14 games in a row at last I checked, and just doing really, really well right now for Arkansas Tech. And then we mentioned the All-Sports Trophy and how these spring sports just help them get points. Well, the tennis team is the top 25 team in the country, and they're one of the best teams in the GAC. The golf teams, both men and women, finished second in the GAC in the tournament, and the men's team had 4 golfers in all GAC competition. They were named all GAC. They are Rowdy Garrett and Malik were named first team, while Bells and Purdy were honorable mention. And then 4 Great American Conference golfers, 4 Golden Suns golfers and tennis players were named to all conference squads. And then Rebecca Sertival, we've talked about her in years past, and it's with good reason, because her freshman year, she was the GAC the golfer of the year. Her sophomore year, she was the GAC golfer of the year. Her junior year, she's now the GAC player of the year in golf. Wow, 3 years in a row to be the player of the year in your sport. Just 1 year, like we were talking about for the Brightest Stars banquet, to win that award would be incredible. But that's the equivalent of winning 3 years in a row. That's incredible, incredible news for Rebecca Sertival and the Arkansas Tech Golden Suns golf team.
You would think with that on your resume, you should be able to make a little money once you're done playing college golf.
Apparently she can play.
Yeah, but apparently she can play. You mentioned how well Arkansas Tech's baseball team is doing. This is what I like about baseball. There have been years where Arkansas Tech's been good in football, or they've been good in basketball, and there'll be years where the Arkansas Razorbacks aren't that good in that particular sport. But you say, but if you ever put them on the field together, it'd be a massacre. I think Tech could get a game in a 7-game series from the Hogs. No kidding whatsoever, because it's baseball. Look, it's not like they're physically having to play against each other and have to hit and run and tackle. It's baseball. College teams beat pro teams. Yes, split squad, but they beat pro teams all the time. Florida State against the Marlins, or Boston College against the Diamondbacks. It happens all the time. I think Arkansas Tech could get a game from the Hogs right now. I'm just saying. I think they could get a game. 7-game series.
Number 4 in the country, right there in the GAC race, and looking to compete, man. Let's compete for a championship. That's something that the Arkansas Tech baseball team hadn't been able to do in a long time. Man, we've got a whole lot of stuff on the Sports Blitz. We're going to have to speak faster. After that, we may even take more than an hour. We can do that because we don't have a block of time.
I don't think Maddie
We can just do whatever we want. Maddie is just going to sit over there and he's going to like it. We may even get him a microphone. Who knows?
Uh-oh.
We'll be back right after this break.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. We've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
here's what you missed.
Updated news.
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
Developing stories.
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
And weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on. KARK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
Welcome back to the Sports Blitz. Today is Friday. Mark and I bringing it home the way we always do. It is NBA playoff time, and of course, one of the teams that's not in the playoffs this year is the Detroit Pistons. But their predecessors of decades ago, the Pistons of the late 80s and into the early 90s, were certainly big-time NBA figures, two-time world champions. And ESPN did a 30 for 30 on the Bad Boy Pistons. It aired last night. It was sensational. I watched every bit of it, and I was wanting more. I've said this before, Mark, I have a documentary philosophy. Normally, I get bored. Like, if it's an hour long, I'm done after 30 minutes. If it's 2 hours, I'm done after an hour. 2 hours, 30 for 30 every time, and I always want a third hour. Yep. And this Bad Boy Pistons series was really no different. It chronicled everything that went on. Like, we know the Bad Boy Pistons. We can name the players. We know they won 2 championships. But I felt like we didn't really know them. We knew them, but we didn't know them, if that makes sense. And so you got to see how the team was put together. Obviously, you had Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer. Wasn't near enough, so they started bringing some guys in. They bring in Rick Mahorn. Rick Mahorn's like, I don't want to play for this team. I can't stand Detroit. And he finally fell into line. Then you look at bringing in AD, who was an older player but still one of the top scorers in the game, and his clash with Isaiah Thomas. You saw all this work together. Of course, they had to deal him during the second championship run, bring in Mark Aguirre, an all-star in his own right. And just the togetherness, John Sally, Dennis Rodman's story. I think most of us knew his story, but they kind of told it again, and how he was mopping floors and ended up playing small school, getting drafted, and it's really a great, well-done story. It was far beyond the narrative of they were just a bunch of bad guys. This was a true team. I like how ESPN, Mark, painted the obstacles they went to in terms of the NBA had 2 glamour powers, East Coast, West Coast, Lakers, Celtics. And the Pistons were that Midwest team trying to knock off the NBA's glamour teams, and they had to do it one at a time. You had to knock off the Celtics in the East. Then you had to knock off the Lakers in the finals. They did it. And then there was this young buck, some dude in Chicago that they just kept slapping away because he was too young. Of course, we know he finally got over that hump. So, great series.
Man, it was a really good series. And for guys like us who watch the NBA and care, it was cool to get to know like the behind-the-scenes stuff. I didn't know about the Adrian Dantley stuff. Yeah. I didn't know about how he and Isaiah didn't like each other. I wasn't old enough to really follow the news anyway back then, but paying attention to how the team came together and how there's a lot of work behind the scenes just to get that team together. And then knowing what we know about guys like Dennis Rodman now and how that team kept him together. I mean, he said it himself after having that family atmosphere and then it going away. He just said, I went completely nuts because he didn't have anybody to, and he really, I mean, he's wearing a dress with tats and rings hanging out of everything, and he's a weird dude, but they kept him together as part of that family, and I was very, very entertained last night watching that, and I was never a Detroit Pistons fan. Obviously, as a Michael Jordan fan, going back through history, when I grew up, the first series that I remember was in 1992. I remember the Bulls and Blazers. I remember the Dream Team. I didn't even know about the drama, and they didn't talk anything about that, about the drama behind Isaiah Thomas not making the Dream Team.
That was
even though Larry Bird was busted down and old, and they could have easily used Isaiah Thomas when Larry Bird was just he was just there on a glory tour. It's Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and Michael Jordan squad, and so they could have used Isaiah Thomas. Not that it mattered; they were crushing everybody, but they didn't talk about that drama. But they did an incredible job of really dealing with the whole the whole back process of how the team came together, what was going on in the NBA, what was going on in Detroit, what was going on in the world. So, man, the ESPN 30 for 30s are always really good.
They do. And I find myself, after I watch every one, I'm like, that's the best one I've seen. And then the next one comes out, like, that's the best one I've seen. I mean, I got to tell you, Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan, that was one of my favorite ones when that one came out. I'm not even a figure skating fan, but they figured out a way to lock me in. Another cool part about that was very rarely do you see anything like this involving Michael Jordan that's not about Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Like, it was really unique to see Michael Jordan sort of play a backdrop role in a series. Because if Michael's involved, usually it's about the Bulls teams or it's about him. But Michael was just sort of a figure in this whole story of the Bad Boy Pistons. I really enjoyed that too. And Isaiah, and this is something I always knew, but I got to see more of it. Isaiah was a guy who people always felt was phony. I think that's one reason why he never became bigger than what he was. It's just, Magic was seen as an authentic guy with his smile. Michael Jordan doing his marketing, they were seen as authentic. Isaiah, people just never warmed up to him as a star, even though he was a really, really good player. So I think you saw a little bit of why that was behind the scenes.
Well, a part of the problem with Isaiah is that his actions didn't necessarily match his face, but that's not his fault. He's smiling, but he was an assassin. He was one of those guys, the silent assassin, the guy who would smile to your face and cut you in the throat. That's just, I kind of respect that. I'll just have to be honest with you. The way he carried himself, learning about how they didn't go out and party on the road. They just stayed laid back after New Year's. There was no drinking, nothing. It was just basketball. I can respect that. I didn't like the way they tried to kill people on the court, but that was just the way the 80s were.
That's what I was about to go to that point. You look at, just forearms now. We flagrant ejection. Forearm, he gets up, just a personal foul. Like, he clotheslined the dude. Just a foul. It's a different game. We try to compare eras. I don't know if any era could play in the opposite era. You look at the Bad Boy Pistons, if they played today, they'd all be suspended and they'd all get a foul called on them every play. They couldn't play. But you look at Miami, you put them back then, Dwayne Wade, we remember in 06 when you looked at him wrong and he got a foul called. Now you can forearm Dwayne.
He lived on the free throw line.
He lived on the free throw line. Now you can forearm and clothesline Wade and they won't call anything. I don't know how Miami would do under those
I was going to
rules.
say, what would happen if the Heat of today, or let's say last year before, whenever they were at their best, went back and played in the 80s against those Pistons teams? LeBron and D. Wade, they'd be picking themselves up off the floor a lot.
I think it's one of those things where neither team, we can just use those two teams for example. I don't think they could play in each other's era. You say, well, who would win a series? I think who's got the officials? What era are we playing in? Are the Bad Boys coming up to today? I think Miami would run them out of town. Are the Heat going back to the late 80s? I think Miami would get beat up. I think that'd be really a tough thing to compare.
Golly, how cool would that be to watch? Who would guard? I guess it'd have to be like a Dennis Rodman who would guard LeBron.
Yeah.
Who else could? And then you'd have to have like an Isaiah or a Joe Dumars on Dwayne Wade, and that's a mismatch.
Yeah.
Man, that'd be fun. I've always loved comparing, although you can't really compare. It'd be fun to see who'd guard Isaiah Thomas. You'd probably have to have LeBron on him a lot of time.
Well, Chalmers would probably do most of the game, but then crunch time, LeBron. I think.
Oh man, that'd be fun.
It'd be fun. I always want to see a tournament. And we talked about Bill Simmons, and I got to find his list of greatest NBA teams ever. I like to do like a 16 team, just like the regular playoffs, of the greatest teams ever. Let them battle it out. Now, some teams would be duplicates. We'd take the duplicates. So we don't want Jordan versus Jordan, 96 versus 97, nothing like that. But, it'd be cool to take the best Jordan Bulls, the best of Magic's teams, the best of LeBron teams, and just play them off,
That'd be pretty sweet. It'd be very, very subjective, so that'd be a tough thing to do. But all right, let's move on to the NBA playoffs real quickly before we hit a break. We've got the playoff matchup set. Teams have done what they had to do to get into the playoffs and get seated where they wanted to get. We're looking at you, New Jersey Nets of Brooklyn. We're looking at you, Toronto Raptors, who everybody wants to play, of somewhere up in Canada. You've got who? Canada, yeah. We've got games starting Saturday at Atlanta, Indiana, the 1-8, Charlotte, Miami, the 2-7. Brooklyn, Toronto, the 3-6 in the East. And then the 4-5 is Washington, Chicago. And then moving over to the West, the 1-8 San Antonio against Dallas. The 2-7 Oklahoma City, Memphis. The 3-6 is the Clippers and the Golden State Warriors, and then the 4-5, the Houston Rockets and the Portland Trail Blazers. Real quickly, who you got? What are your feelings on the playoffs going in?
I've got Miami in the East. I'm looking at their road.
You can give each series winner if you'd like.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and go Miami over Charlotte in 5. It could be a sweep, but Bobcats, they'll play a packed defense. They may get a game. I've got Brooklyn and Toronto is tough. I almost want to go Toronto, even though I think Brooklyn would be more of a challenge to the Heat. The youth and athleticism of Toronto is a problem. I'll still go with Brooklyn. I'll go with Indiana over Atlanta, Chicago over a young, talented Washington team. But I'll reduce it down to Miami. I say they go 6 with Brooklyn, but they beat them. And I say they take out Indiana in 6 over on the East side, Eastern Conference Finals. The West, I have Spurs in 6 over Dallas. Don't think that'll be easy. Portland will lose in 7 to Houston. I've got the Clippers in 6 over Golden State, and I'll take Oklahoma City in 6 over Memphis. But the key series for me, I know it'll be 7 games, Clippers and Thunder. I'll give the Thunder the home court edge, and because it'll be the Thunder playing the Spurs, I got the Thunder beating the Spurs. And by the way, I have San Antonio getting pushed to 7 by Houston because Houston does have some firepower. I think the Spurs win. But let me say this. If the Clippers beat the Thunder, I think the Spurs will beat the Clippers and go back to the finals. But I think the Thunder beat the Clippers. Therefore, the Thunder will beat the Spurs.
I want to preface everything I say with the fact that I am a little worried. I'm a Miami guy because I'm a LeBron James fan. My 2 favorite players in the league for the past decade, LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. Who else am I supposed to like? So I've got the Miami Heat. Obviously, the last 2 years going to the finals and winning it. This year, I'm a little worried. Oklahoma City and San Antonio out of the West, whichever one of those 2 teams come out, I can see there being a problem. And I'll just be honest with you, after watching the finals last year and the way that San Antonio played, I don't know if they've got enough gas left in the tank, but I'm more worried about them than I am even Oklahoma City. With all the athleticism that Oklahoma City brings and Kevin Durant, and you can't stop him, the only thing that stops Oklahoma City is whether or not Russell Westbrook misses shots. I mean, that's
took his pill today.
Because seriously, if he's almost unstoppable too as far as letting him get in the shot that he wants, but he just takes so many shots that sometimes he throws off the rhythm, and that's one way that you can beat them, really, if Russell Westbrook just kind of beats them for you. So I worry a little bit more about the Spurs than I do the Oklahoma City Thunder. But looking over here in the East, Indiana over Atlanta, 5, maybe 6 at the most. Miami over Charlotte, I'm with you. Charlotte may get 1 game. Al Jefferson, it's just Miami's going to clamp down on defense finally, and it's going to matter for them. It's going to be interesting to see how Dwayne Wade fits back in. Obviously, he did all right in the last couple games, but we'll see how the chemistry and the substitution patterns and everything work. I think Miami's going to have no trouble with Charlotte. Brooklyn, Toronto. I'm going Toronto because screw you, Brooklyn. You do all this crap just to get to where you can face Toronto, and I'm just purely on principle. I'm going Toronto. I'm going to root for Toronto. I want them to sweep Brooklyn. Do I think that's going to happen? No, but I'm going to be rooting for Toronto in that series. And then I've got Chicago over Washington because Washington, I think, has got more talent offensively, but I was watching this playoff preview last night, and they talked about how Washington misses more mid-range jumpers than any team in the league because they settle for mid-range jumpers rather than going to the bucket, and they shoot a lot of threes too. But they said that Chicago, they'll want you to take that mid-range jumper, and if you're going to miss it, they're just going to suffocate you. Yeah. So I've got Chicago winning that series in about 6 games. I wouldn't be too surprised if that went 7 if Washington got hot, but Chicago's going to win the series. Going over to the West, San Antonio over Dallas, maybe 6 games depending on how well Dirk plays. If not, I can see that being 4 or 5 even because Dallas just Monte Ellis, not a big fan. Oklahoma City over Memphis. Memphis isn't quite the same as they've been over the past few years. I've got Oklahoma City in about 6. LA Clippers and Golden State. It's going to be 150 to 149 every night, but I don't see this going more than 6 games. Clippers win. And then Houston, Portland, It's going to be another game of lots and lots of offense. Another series, of lots and lots of offense. When you've got a James Harden and you've got a Dwight Howard and you've got that talent on the offensive side of the ball, I'll just take that by a hair over Damian Lillard and over LaMarcus Aldridge from Portland. So I'd go 7 in that one. Houston winning over the Portland Trailblazers. Like I said, Indiana, Miami in the East. If anything else happens in the East, something bad happened. Somebody got hurt. Somebody broke their neck because there's nobody else in the East that's worth a poo. And then in the West, if it doesn't come down to San Antonio and Oklahoma City, I'll be very, very surprised. And don't even ask me how it's going to happen with San Antonio, but I've got them going back to the finals. Don't know.
Really?
I really don't know how it's going to happen. It's just the way they do. They come out and they win 60 games every year because they feel like winning every night. They're in every game. They never get blown out.
What about the matchup?
I hate them.
What about the matchup with the Thunder?
I don't. That's like I said. The last time they played when Russell Westbrook was healthy, the Spurs. What did they win? The first 2 games or the first game?
The first
and then,
2.
And then the Thunder won the rest.
Had
The
James
Thunder,
Harden, though.
Athletically speaking, it's not even a contest. The Thunder are so much better, but the Spurs just find a way most of the time to win. I thought, and I wrote them off when the Thunder beat them. I was like, all right, there it is. That's done. Pass the torch. It's over. Oklahoma City for the next decade in the West. I don't know why I'm saying this, and really, honestly, as a Heat guy, I'd rather the Thunder win because I'm not as scared of them as I am the Spurs. But I'm seeing the Spurs coming back with one last run. Tim Duncan's going out. He wants to win an NBA championship, and that's why it scares me because he's that great, a transcendent superstar from 2 decades.
Yeah.
He's not 2 generations, but two decades. And I don't know why I'm saying this, but I'm going the San Antonio Spurs to get back to the finals.
2 generations. Who you think he is? Kareem?
Seriously, he really did. Really did.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. Oklahoma City, they've covered up for not having James Harden, which is a big reason why they blew the Spurs out 4 straight games 2 years ago. They don't have that now. I would like to see the Spurs in the finals just because I want to see a good finals. I think Spurs and Heat, yes, you would have those 2 best players with Durant, LeBron if that happened, but I just think it'd be fun to see Heat and Spurs. In the East, I think it's going to get down to Indiana and Miami. I just don't see it. I think it'll be fun to watch Miami and Brooklyn just because Paul Pierce is annoying, and a Paul Pierce team going against LeBron James. Paul Pierce's team may not win the series, but it's going to be an annoying, pesky series.
And they're going to try to win the fight.
They're going to try to
Who
win.
was that said that? We may
a
not win the
series.
game, but we're going to win the fight.
It was somebody last night. Wasn't
Okay.
It? Yeah. I think that was something they would say with the bad boy Pistons. But, I look at Brooklyn, and they're getting a little bit too much talk. I know I said that they could go with 6 games with Miami. Some people are now talking like they want an upset or calling for an upset. I can't quite get there just because Miami's championship experience. But you look at, when Miami, I remember 2012, Celtics Heat. LeBron was trying to win a title. They hadn't won one yet. Celtics were up 3-2 going back to Boston. LeBron dropped 45 points. It's just something about a Pierce team that's annoying, and I can't wait to watch that series because he's got some scores with him too. He's got Darren, he's got Joe, and Sean Livingston. That'll be the most entertaining series in the East. I say it's more entertaining than Heat and Pacers because I ain't really feeling the Pacers right now. I'm not feeling it.
The Pacers have another gear that I think they can get to, but like I said, I'm rooting for Brooklyn to get smashed in the first round.
They I don't know what smash. They could get beat by Toronto, and I think Miami would smash Toronto.
And they would be saying, thank you, Brooklyn, for being stupid, because in a 7-game series, although you could be ground to a halt by Chicago and have nothing left by the time you got to Miami, at least you didn't get beat. So I'm hoping that Toronto wins that series and they give them the finger on the way out the door.
The finger.
Yeah. See ya, Brooklyn. Have some. I'm not a Paul Pierce fan. He is a punk to me.
Kevin Garnett will put his beats on. He's like, he's the man. He's the man. He's the man.
All right, we got to hit a break. We've got a little bit more Sports Blitz. This is going to be a little double break. This is what we're going to do, so we don't have to come back with a real short segment. We'll go double break, and then we'll come back, and we'll close up shop for a Friday.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
It's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on KRK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
It's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on KRK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Everyone's favorite NCAA president, Mark Emmert, opened mouth and inserted foot once again. Welcome back into the Sports Blitz on a Friday. This is going to be our last segment. It's going to be a free-for-all. Lots of stuff coming at you from a bunch of different angles, so we appreciate you staying with us today on RiverValleyLeader.com on the Sports Blitz here in the Cogswell Motors studios. Mark Freeman, Weldon Braxton, Maddie Lassiter here in the studio to bring you the latest. Mark Emmert comes out and Weldon, you talked about this before the show, and sort of defense of Mark Emmert, although some of the stuff he does I think is indefensible, but you've got some good thoughts about it. He talked about the NCAA rule about food. We remember the national championship game and Shabazz Napier talking about going to bed hungry and that type of thing, and the NCAA came out with this ruling that they can have unlimited meal plans and snacks and things like that, and Mark Emmert, who you can hear me say it. I'm not a big fan of his. Is talking about how the UConn coaches or whatever they can feed Shabazz Napier breakfast in bed.
Yeah.
For all I care now, it's just out. That was an absurd rule, and there's so many absurd. Dude, you're the president. You might want to, in your tenure, sometime do something. He's just, to me, Like I said, every time he opens his mouth, it's just like shove your foot further down.
And I'm pulling up here some of his comments. We talked about the one you just mentioned, the one with Shabazz. Then when talking about paying players and compensating them, he says, their players are taking seats away from a student athlete. Now, I did note he says NCAA presidents say that. To kind of pass the buck on him. And I guess that's the one thing where I'm not defending him, but I'm defending the position. There's a clear difference. The position of president of the NCAA more so than Mark Emmert. I'm separating the two. I understand being the president of the NCAA is difficult because you got to not only pull 30 to 32 teeth like you do in pro sports as a commissioner, you got to pull 300 and something teeth or more when you talk about all divisions. But if you're talking just Division I, it's 300 and something plus. And it's not like in pro sports where, you have some rich teams, some not so rich teams, but everybody's still rich. In college sports, it's like Arkansas, Alabama, New Mexico State. And it's like their interests just aren't the same. I mean, the Hogs and the UCA Bears, I'm sorry, but there's going to be some things Arkansas needs and wants to do and some different things that UCA needs and wants to do, yet they're all pulling on the same string. So I get that it's difficult. Now, Emmert does not help himself by making some of the comments that he's made. And I remember when Emmert took the job, he sounded really good when he took it because he said things that you and I wanted to hear. He's like, I looked at the rule book and there are just too many rules and these rules don't make sense and they're not very practical. And we're sitting at home saying, yeah, okay, NCAA's got somebody now. Yeah, he gets it. It doesn't look like he gets it as much as we had hoped.
And let me be fair, because I've been a little harsh so far. Mark Emmert, like you said, it's like in Arkansas, for those of you that watch or pay attention to high school sports, the AAA is a smaller version of the NCAA. They don't really make the rules. They just have to enforce the ones that are voted on and so Mark Emmert is the face of an organization we hate. That's just basically the way it is. They decide that if you put cream cheese on that bagel, it's a meal and not a snack, and you can't do that. And he said himself that it was absurd and some of those things. But my point is that it seems like every time we turn around, he's talking. And he's not doing anything, but he's talking.
Yeah.
And it has to have something like this come out before Shabazz Napier saying stuff like, we're going to bed hungry before anything happens. And Jay Billis has to go write books and just absolutely hammer the NCAA at every turn before anything happens. And I just, take it to a vote, do whatever you got to do, but do something. That's the big thing that I've got, the big problem I've got with the NCAA, that they're just more talk and a lot of bark.
No bite.
But no bite. And that's an issue for me.
And look, I know I sound like a broken record. I tweeted it and I'll say it again. I've said it on this show 5 times. You're going to have a split among Division I teams. There's just no way to get around it. I already mentioned UCA and Arkansas and how their interests are just different. That's nobody's fault. Nobody did anything wrong. It's just they're different schools. We can't pretend like, they operate the same way. Yeah, we label them FCS and FBS, but we still have similar expectations, for all of Division I athletics. And you just can't have it that way. I'm not even saying that, if some 1AA schools still want to compete or they still feel they can compete, fine. But I think there needs to be different rules. Power conference schools have different needs. Power conference schools are growing at a fast rate financially in every sort of way. And they've got to be able to foster that growth, and it can't be held behind by Division I AA schools. Split them. Let the 1AA schools do what they need to do. Let the power schools do what they need to do. That way, now when people vote on things, it'll just be power conference presidents voting on things. Therefore, you have more like minds. Exactly.
And you better do that, NCAA, or else you're not going to have a job here in the next couple decades. I know it's slow moving, but that's right. The way everything is. If they don't do something in the next in this generation, you're going to see people just leave. The SEC is just going to say, what do we need with this? This is what we're dealing with. We got anyway, long story. We'll move on from there. I don't know if you saw the Minnesota State Mankato. This guy's from, he's a Minnesota.
Yeah.
What are you, Minnesotan?
I think that's what the
Minnesotan.
I think that's what it is. Minnesota. Yeah.
Minnesota State, man, they've been through it in the last couple of years. Former coach Todd Hoffner he won an arbitration hearing that decided that, a couple years back he was fired because, and you may have read this story or heard about it or remember from back then, that he was accused of having child porn on his phone, and somebody saw it, and it was a state-issued, school-issued cell phone. It turns out those were his kids. Playfully after a bath, it was determined by an arbiter that he lost his job, and he was exonerated. He lost his job unjustly, and he was exonerated. And the arbiter ruled that he needed to get his job back, which creates a whole nother ball of wax. But long story short, he's going back to Minnesota State Mankato, and yesterday the players decided they didn't want to practice. They liked the guy that led them to an 11-1 record last year as an interim coach. They wanted him to stay. Now it's all kind of fixed itself. I wondered this morning how that turned out, and the players have decided they're going to end their boycott. They're going to play for Coach Hoffner, and that's just a crazy situation from all angles.
It really is a crazy situation. It's a tough deal. First of all, the way it got started. And even though the arbiter found that he wasn't in fault, you still have to be careful on a phone, in a school issued phone where it's not your stuff. It can be monitored. It can be checked anytime. I mean, because even something as harmless as this, ended up being, it's still something you really can't take a chance with. I mean, like I said, whether it's something harmless like that, or if it's like your Uncle Bob with Arkansas on his phone, and you can check and see what he did as far as text messages. Anytime you're on a school-issued phone or a school-issued email, you got to be overly sensitive. Like I said, I've got my iTask email, and I recruit. And that's all I do. I recruit and talk to other coaches with it. Other than that, I don't do anything else. I have a phone. It's right here. Whenever I need to talk to somebody or personal calls, that's what I do with that. And so you create a tough situation because the players, as you mentioned now, Mark, they yesterday had a boycott. They didn't want to play for, their old coach. And both coaches were successful, 11-1 under the interim coach. They went 34-13 under the old coach, over a period of time. So both coaches were successful. But again, I think as a head coach, it's got to be tough. I don't know what I would do in that situation. I may be inclined to say, you know what, you can have it. Now, you can't really sue the school either, though. That's what makes this tough. You could say, well, he could step down, not take his job back, and say, hey, you know what, the players don't want me. Just buy me out, let me go. Yeah. But he can't really do that because, the school, the institution isn't firing him. It's just that the players don't want to play for him. So the school can say, well, coach, that's a you problem, not an us problem. So it really
we were forced to have you back.
Yeah, so it's kind of a hairy situation. I wish, and again, I don't know the details. I hear, I was in Minnesota, people mentioned it a little bit, but I wish the school had really made sure they did a thorough investigation, did their due diligence, because when you decide to let somebody go, it has these ramifications. Not like with Coach Richardson, people were saying, give him his job back, the whole lawsuit thing. That wasn't going to happen, but it could have happened in terms of the players because it wasn't an issue where he was fired over a player type deal. The players would have wanted him back. But in this case, the players didn't want him back. They played for another coach. Really makes it a hairy deal. And
like you said, I think that the school should have a little bit of egg on their face as far as the fact that they didn't do enough due diligence to find out what these photos were. Whose kids are these? Are these your kids?
Yeah.
Then it's a different story, because if they're not your kids, you got issues, and we're going to fire you. But ask one simple question, you can decide whether or not. Yeah. Then you reprimand them. Okay, don't take these kind of pictures with your school issued phone. Don't let your wife use your school issued computer. The end. It's a reprimand and not a big hairy ordeal.
Now, I do have to say this, though, because I agree with you 100%. And I think the context is something that somebody brought this up, and I think it's really important to note why the school may have reacted that way. This did sort of go down in wake of Sandusky getting put away. And, every school, every situation is really on edge. Something with kids, fire, get rid. We don't want any association. You know how we are. We know how churches fill up after national attacks and things like that. I'm sorry, but that's how our society goes. When something bad happens, we have a quick trigger right after that and things like that.
You're right.
I think that may be why the school did it. Although I agree with you, though. You open yourself up to this mess if you don't do your due diligence.
And then they have to deal. What happens to the interim coach? He went 11-1 last year, and now, thanks. Another guy coming back to this job. Where does he go? What does he do? And he's got a little bit of a resume boost from this. But does he stay? I think he was the offensive coordinator before.
Tough, yeah.
Does he stay? Does he go? I think the only way that those kids probably came back is if they got some assurance that he was going to stay. Otherwise, the kids are just like, we're going to have 3 coaches in 3 years. I know it's 2 guys, but we're going to have to go through this again, and we're going to have all this scrutiny on us. That's a rough situation for those guys, and they've been playing well. So.
They've been playing well, and as a coach, I'm just going to tell you this: that is an impossible dynamic. If those kids bargain to say, "Okay, we'll play," but he's got to be on staff, it'll never work. I'm telling you why. You've got an assistant coach who now has the respect of the players more so than the head coach. You talk about hierarchy and authority and all that stuff. That is not a good deal. They're a good team. I guess they'll win some games, but it's going to be a strange dynamic. I think it'll hold them back a little bit.
So you think he shouldn't be on the staff?
I think if that head coach is going to return to coach the team, that assistant coach shouldn't be there. If not, let the head coach go, have the assistant be the head coach, and go with it from there.
Makes sense. That's probably what they'll do. I hadn't seen anything from it, so we'll have to pay attention to that. Let's move on real quickly to Arkansas football. We talked a little spring football earlier on, and Arkansas playing the tough schedule they're going to play next year. Texas Tech is on the schedule next season, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the road.
Did you see what Texas Tech is possibly going to do in their spring game?
Was Cliff going to play?
Cliff Kingsbury, the head coach, former Texas Tech legend and quarterback, talking about they're having some quarterback issues there. We've had some transfers. They've had 2 transfers recently, and they've got no depth at quarterback. And they're talking about suiting up their coach in a spring game. Talk about now I know he'll probably help them as far as just he'll be better than the quarterback they got. That seems to be almost a guarantee. But talk about a little bit of a PR move, kind of a savvy move if I'm Cliff Kingsbury. But I don't know what I think about it.
I think it could work out in his favor from that standpoint, but
unless somebody lights him up.
Yeah, like, you knocked the coach out. But I do think it's a little bit disappointing. Look, Cliff's a young coach. He's got energy. Obviously, he's I support him. I'm in the same boat. I cheer for him, but I think it's a little bit of an oversight as a young head coach to coach an offense that throws the ball 95% of the time. You don't have a roster full of quarterbacks. I know a couple of transferred, but you should still have 1 or 2 still on campus if you're going to be slinging it 90% of the time. But again, I think it was just an oversight on his part. But Cliff and I do have one thing in common. Did you hear his recruiting advantages he uses?
He talks about flirting with mom.
I got a couple commits, and it doesn't hurt. Cliff's right.
I only drink Pearl beer, says Barry Switzer. You're going after the mom, aren't you?
I don't do this thing. It's about getting the kid to play there. And look, mom wants to know, is my kid going to be in good hands? And Cliff's not making this up whatsoever. I'm at a junior college, and I've got firsthand experience. He's right. He's 100% right.
Do you throw on the Barry White voice?
Well, see, I really don't. It's just you got to get mom comfortable. You got to make her feel like, hey, my son's going to good hands. This person I'm talking to is a good leader. He sounds like a good, decent man. I'm sending my player to. I feel comfortable to, and hey. And it kind of warms up. So when the kids report to training camp, I do have some obligations the next couple of evenings, But hey, what you got to do?
I like it. He's got to go out and have some rubber chicken dinners with some parents, huh? And some recruiting promises need to be. Hey, at least he's going to fulfill his duty there. Let's look at the Hogs real quickly. Jabril Durham, talented guard for the basketball team, signed his letter of intent. I guess it's a junior college letter, so I don't know if it's the same thing, but it's similar. He's officially an Arkansas Razorback now. We can breathe a little sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Anton Beard, Jabril Durham, Nick Babb, and Trey Thompson going to be in next year for the Hog basketball team. Hopefully, each one of those guys can help.
Yeah, hopefully so. And I think you have a program when you've got young guys who are contributing behind guys who are on their way out, not guys who are expected to come in and be the guys. So I like that Nick Babb's going to come in, play behind Akai Madden, learn and contribute, because next year he's going to be probably the top 2-guard type player for the Hogs. So that's how you have a program going. We run out of time, Mark. We didn't mention Jabari Parker going to the NBA. I think he'll be a good pro. People knock his upside in favor of Wiggins. Upside can get you fired. I'm liking Jabari.
Rodney Hood joining him.
Yeah, that's right.
Going pro. Wondering about the Harrison twins. A lot of folks saying that they may stay at Kentucky. If they do, it's one more year they get to play together, and then they go their separate ways, and then we'll see. I don't project either one of those two to have a great NBA career, but they're going to get to play for one more year together if they decide to stay in college. Speaking of college, as we're heading out today, did you see that your boy, the mayor, Fred Hoiberg, is being recruited by some folks to go to the Minnesota Timberwolves and take over there? What do you think about that?
Dude, I used to play with Minnesota on NBA Live and light people up with Fred Hoiberg. So, hey.
You didn't go KG and Marbury and
I had them all,
Wally
but
Zerbiak.
I had to space the floor, too. I had the mayor spacing the floor, and I was killing people. Fred Hoiberg is one of the best offensive minds in basketball, period. High school, NBA, college, I don't care. One of the best offensive minds. He can go in there and get the T-Wolves to the playoffs. So I know those people up there, and they thought they should have been in this year.
They should have. I've picked them to be in the NBA playoffs the last 2 years, and they've been poopy. Offense hadn't been a problem for them at all, though.
That's true.
So they got to do what they can to get some defense. They got to recruit Kevin Love is what they've got to do. They've got to make sure they keep him around and then build around him. And I mean, you've seen it's been possible to be done when they went to the Western Conference, I guess, finals.
They went finals
with Kevin Garnett and that team back in the day. So
they
were a fun team to watch back
yeah.
then. So maybe they can get some guys around Kevin Love, and they can put a team together that can go and make a run in the playoffs. I'll be interested to see if Fred Hoiberg takes the bait. Now he probably double his salary or more. He
would, but like you said, that Kevin Love issue is a big deal because I think back in 2010, I think Izzo may have taken that jump if he knew LeBron was going to stay in Cleveland, but he said, I don't know, he might leave on me. I'm not going there, and sure enough, LeBron left, and Byron Scott had to deal with that. But, yeah, I don't know if Hoiberg, that job's not as attractive if you don't have Kevin Love long term, so that's something he'll think about.
Definitely. All right, we're out of time for today. We will be back on Monday with more Sports Blitz. We're going to have plenty to talk about the start of the NBA playoffs, and I'm sure some more crazy stuff's going to go down across the world of sports, and we'll talk about it. For Weldon and Maddie, I'm Mark saying so long. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back on Monday at 11 with more Sports Blitz.